Wish you weren't here. Overcrowding and chaos at UK airports as flights are cancelled and tempers fray.
Want to go home.
Airlines are struggling to cope with ongoing staff shortages, leading to delays and disruption. Desperate travellers seeing their precious plans in tatters.
2 years in the planning, and what they've basically done was basically just went like an axe, no explanation, no compassion, no consideration, nothing.
So how long could it last then? How bad could it get? And who is to blame? Also tonight, hit by the cost of living crisis, calls for free school meals for pupils of all families on universal credit. A growing roll call of discontent. A former senior cabinet minister becomes the latest Tory MP publicly to criticise Boris Johnson. And the secrets of royal style. How to accessorise the most famous woman in the world.
This is the ITV Evening News with Mary Nightingale.
Good evening. It is becoming clear tonight that thousands of people across Britain this week is fast becoming the holiday week from hell. Many UK airports continue to suffer major disruption today as staff shortages cause more cancellations and delays, with frustrated holidaymakers left stranded at terminals or even stuck at home. Well, now the blame game has begun. The government pointed the finger at the aviation industry, saying it should employ enough staff to meet demand. Labour accused the government of being unprepared, while unions predicted the chaos could last until Christmas. Rebecca Barry reports.
Half-term holidays halted, bank holiday getaways grounded. At Gatwick, Stansted, Bristol, Manchester, queues, delays and cancelled flights.
You're all going to be getting a full refund, which I would expect.
At Manchester, it fell to the police to break the news to these passengers about to board their flight that their holiday was off.
It was really disappointing.
Jayesh filmed that. Instead of Greece for his 3 kids, it's now jigsaws sheltering from the rain.
We were going away for the first time since the pandemic for our first family holiday for a year and a half abroad. We arrived at Manchester Airport 3 hours before our advertised flight time, as per all our advice. After a series of delays, spending 8 hours in the airport, our flight and holiday was cancelled via text message.
Might as well have been animals in a zoo, sleeping on the cold concrete floor.
After 2 cancelled flights at 2 different airports and £6,000 of extra costs, Pooja and her immediate family have finally made it to Turkey for her wedding on Thursday. But dozens of their guests are still stranded in the UK.
It's making me feel really sad, really emotional and
Angry. 2 years in the planning, and what they've basically done was basically just went like an axe, no explanation, no compassion, no consideration, nothing.
It's estimated since last Wednesday, almost 300 flights from major UK airports have been cancelled. EasyJet cancelled at least 31 flights at Gatwick today, and TUI Airways says it will cancel around 6 flights a day at Manchester Airport until the end of June. Airlines and airports are struggling with staff shortages after thousands were let go during the pandemic.
I think they thought that there were going to be millions of people on dole queues who'd be happy to come back to work, and the reality is very different. You know, people who've worked in airports have got other jobs that often pay more money, that have more family-friendly policies, better shifts, better terms and conditions, and they're not coming back to the industry.
The government insists it supported the industry through lockdown and it should have been prepared for the increase in demand.
We've put in place, obviously, billions of pounds of support for the travel industry, in particular during the pandemic. Right now there are, conversations happening between the industry and ministers to make sure that that disruption can be eased.
But unions are warning things could get even worse this summer. Rebecca Barry, ITV News.
Well, Ellie Pitt is at Heathrow tonight. Ellie, horrific scenes. But we've heard from the Transport Secretary, haven't we, this evening?
Yes, Mary, in the last hour we've heard from Grant Shapps, the Transport Secretary, who's getting tough on travel companies tonight and says they've seriously oversold their flights and holidays relative to what they can deliver. He's also reminded the travel sector this evening that the government provided £8 billion worth of support during the pandemic, but we know the aviation industry is trying to recoup £145 billion worth of lost income. It's clear over the last week that airports and airlines are really struggling to cope with that lost income. Travel unions warning that they're not going to be able to improve the situation much before the summer holidays, but the government tonight saying that's not good enough and they don't want a repeat of what's happened this half term.
OK, Ellie Pitt at Heathrow, thank you. And if you have got a trip planned and you want more information about how to prepare or indeed what compensation might be available, then head to our website. That's at itv.com/news. Moving on now, there are calls tonight for the free school meals scheme in England to be extended to all pupils of families on universal credit. Unions and school staff organisations say the cost of living crisis means an increasing number of families are struggling to afford school lunches. The government says it is already providing extra support, and Sangeeta Lal has the story.
I did a weekly shop on Friday last week.
Yeah.
And this is what I'm left with.
What you've got for all of the holiday this week?
Yeah. I only have one main meal a day. Hannah tends to have some sandwiches in the afternoon, and then the main meal with me. But that's it.
Naomi is a single working mother. Her salary is too high to get free school meals for her 8-year-old daughter Hannah. Too low, though, to afford more than one meal a day now, since her bills have increased.
I just don't know if I'm going to have enough money to buy food at the end of the month. With, as I mentioned, with the council tax this week has left me with £5 in my bank. It's half term. It's frightening.
How hard is it when Hannah's asking to go somewhere where her friends are going?
She asks for things, but there's a few tears, but she's gotten used to it.
Do you ever get used to it?
No. You feel like you're failing them. It's hard.
Something teaching unions understand, though, now calling on government to support more families like Naomi's. The latest figures show 1.7 million pupils in England are currently eligible for free school meals, but campaigners say that should be extended to another 900,000 pupils currently ineligible, whose families are on universal credit but whose household income is more than £7,400 a year. Families who are having to use food banks like this to help get through the holidays. The government today, though, said there's a different solution.
What's important to remember is actually the best way to help people long term is to get people into work and make sure that those jobs are well paid.
But teachers argue England needs to fall in line with the rest of the UK.
In Northern Ireland, it's 14,000, but also in Scotland and in Wales, free school meals are universal. Why not in England?
A question many parents like Naomi are asking, caught out by the rising cost of living, hoping one day to just enjoy the holidays. Sangeeta Lal, ITV News, Preston.
In a further blow to Boris Johnson today, a former senior cabinet figure and close Brexit ally spoke out against him. And there has been another development in the last half hour as the Prime Minister's independent advisor on standards has said he must explain whether or not he broke the ministerial code over Partygate. Well, we'll get more on that in just a moment. But first, to the growing roll call of unhappy colleagues willing to criticise the PM. Let's get more from our political correspondent, Carl Dinham.
The Prime Minister faces a steady drip of letters calling for a vote of confidence, and no one knows which one will finally trigger it. Today, the Carlisle MP became the latest Tory to call for his leader to go.
Well, I'm very disappointed it has come to this. I think the continuing saga of Partygate and the other issues that surround that is debilitating for government. Given what has gone on, I think it's time for a change of Prime Minister.
Even former close colleagues like Andrea Leadsom are withdrawing their support. Today she wrote there have been unacceptable failings of leadership that cannot be tolerated and are the responsibility of the Prime Minister. Bob Neal has also called for a confidence vote over Partygate.
This wasn't an isolated incident, it wasn't something that could be a one-off mistake. This is something where the rules had been broken over a period of some months.
So do you think the Prime Minister wasn't telling the truth to Parliament?
Well, the phrase I use, I didn't find, looking at the totality of it, the explanations given credible.
Ministers say it's time to move on.
He's apologised for what went on at Number 10. He's made some changes to the operation. It's absolutely right that he's taken responsibility for that as the leader of that organisation and the leader of the government. But it's right that across government we're all focused on the things that matter, the helping people with the rising cost of living by growing the economy.
But some Tory activists aren't even sure he's getting those things right.
It's not just Partygate anymore. It's the fact that the Conservative Party doesn't seem to be the Conservative Party. The rise in national insurance hasn't been taken away. The VAT on fuel is still there.
It takes 54 letters from Tory MPs to trigger a confidence vote. 28 have called for Boris Johnson to go publicly. The number doing so privately is unknown, but a vote of confidence looks more likely by the day. Carl Dinnan, ITV News, Westminster.
Well, let's get more on that development I mentioned on the report into the ministerial code and whether or not Boris Johnson broke it. And our political correspondent, Libby Wiener, is in Westminster. Libby, what is the latest on this?
Yes, well, Mary, a potentially very serious development for the Prime Minister. His own independent advisor on standards openly suggesting now that that fixed penalty notice that he got, the fine for breaching COVID regulations, attending a party in Number 10 Downing Street, might constitute a breach of the ministerial code, which would trigger the Prime Minister's resignation. Now, the fact that he's gone so far in his report, I think, is hugely worrying for the Prime Minister. He also goes on to say that while he can't be judge and jury in this case himself, if the Prime Minister doesn't give a public account, a proper explanation as to why he doesn't think he's breached the ministerial code, then Lord Geidt himself would consider resigning. Now, the Prime Minister has written to Lord Geidt denying that he breached the ministerial code. The letter released a short time ago, he said in the circumstances he didn't believe that he had breached the code. But as I said, I think this is a very worrying development for Boris Johnson tonight.
OK, Libby Wiener at Westminster, thank you. Look at some other news now. The first two funerals of the 19 children killed by a gunman in a Texas primary school are taking place today. Maita Rodriguez and Amerie Jo Garza were both just 10 years old. The actor Kevin Spacey has said he plans to appear voluntarily before British courts to defend himself against 4 charges of sexual assault brought against him last week. And the first flight carrying migrants to Rwanda will take place in just over a fortnight, the Home Office has announced. The African country has agreed to rehome immigrants deemed to have arrived in the UK illegally. Now, the Archbishop of Canterbury has spoken about forgiveness in relation to the issues surrounding Prince Andrew. In an interview with ITV News ahead of the Queen's Platinum Jubilee, he described her reign as a golden thread that runs through 70 years. But Justin Welby also said society needs to be more forgiving. And our Royal Editor Chris Shipp is here. Intriguing stuff, isn't it, Chris? What else did he say?
OK, let's be clear. Justin Welby did not say that the country should forgive Prince Andrew, but he was asked about Prince Andrew and about forgiveness being a central thinking to Christianity. And he said a number of things, including that we should be more open and more forgiving as a society. This is what he said to Tom for tonight's News at 10.
Forgiveness really does matter. I think we have become a very, very unforgiving society. Now, with Prince Andrew, I think we all have to step back a bit. He's seeking to make amends, and I think that's a very good thing. But you can't tell people how they're to respond about this, and the issues of the past in the area of abuse are so intensely personal and private for so many people. It's not surprising there's very deep feelings indeed.
Let's just be clear that Prince Andrew always denied the allegations of sexual assault. He also settled out of court with no liability. We have had a further clarification from the Archbishop of Canterbury's office tonight, and they said he was not referring specifically to Prince Andrew. And the Archbishop himself said these are complex issues and he hopes they do not distract from this week's Platinum Jubilee.
OK, very quickly, he also commented on the Queen's choice of Prince Andrew to accompany her, didn't he, to Duke of Edinburgh's
We have a
service.
picture of Prince Andrew with the Queen, remember, at Westminster Abbey, where he said she was fully entitled to bring one of her children there. But the Queen just returned this evening to Windsor from a little break in Balmoral. There she is in her car, returning to Windsor. Raining, of course, but she's back after that break for her Jubilee bank holiday weekend, which all begins on Thursday.
And Queen always rains, Chris, as you know.
Right.
There is plenty more still to come. The Queen's fashion over the decades. We meet those who've helped style her from hats to handbags.
And what about coats? Will those celebrating here be needing them this weekend? I'll have the full forecast for you shortly.
But before that, yet another heartbreaking consequence of Russia's war in Ukraine is that it's creating a missing generation of children. In the 3 months since Russian forces launched their invasion, 2,000 Ukrainian children have vanished. That is 10 times the number that might normally go missing every year. Lucy Watson met one father desperately hoping that his son will one day come home.
Before the war, this is what families in Ukraine could do together. When Vladislav Buryak was safe. But in April, this schoolboy is thought to have been abducted by Russian troops at a checkpoint.
He has never served in the army, he's never held a weapon, he's still at school.
Oleg Buryak is a government official, but also Vladislav's dad. He thinks his job is the reason why his son was taken.
I know for a fact he's in a prison cell, but Russian negotiators let me speak to him today. He keeps asking me, when will they let me go? When will you come and get me? Mentally, he's still holding on. He's not broken yet.
In every decimated street and village terrorized by the Russian onslaught, lives have been ripped apart and children have disappeared. Ukraine's Missing Persons charity has recorded 10 times the number of annual cases in just 3 months.
These huge numbers, no one could be prepared for it. We have received around 2,200 cases of missing children. You know, the hardest is to think or your child is alive or no, and what can be with him or her.
Where sisters Daria, Anna and Maria are, nobody knows either. They were last seen in February in this apartment block in Borodyanka.
I hope they are alive, but so much time has passed and we have heard nothing about them.
Valentina's son went to the same school as the girls.
I can't bring myself to think that they have died.
Another mother stopped to talk to us too.
My children keep asking me if they've been found, what's happened to them. Maybe they were taken away to Russia.
Many of the children who've gone missing in this conflict have disappeared alone, some across European borders, some as forced evacuees to Russia. But many of them simply can't be found because of the destruction to buildings, to infrastructure, and the loss of communications.
Communities are trying their best to exist again, but so much of their life still hangs in the balance. There is no consolation for what is happening here. Lucy Watson, ITV News, Borodyanka, Ukraine.
And the impact of the war in Ukraine is increasingly being felt further afield. The EU's agreement today to impose a ban on most Russian oil and gas imports is likely to affect energy costs here in the UK. But motorists say they're already feeling the pinch from sharply rising pump prices. And Rhys Williams is live for us in Garrow Valley near Bridgend. Rhys.
Well, Mary, we'd already been seeing fuel price increases following a surge in demand after lockdown, but more recently it's been concerns over supply that's really been driving those prices up due to Russia's invasion of Ukraine, and it's led to today's record price of an average of 172 pence per litre for petrol here in the UK, although as many of us will know the price can be much higher at different forecourts like this one in the Garw Valley near Bridgend, where it's already 180 pence per litre. Now, what this means is that it now costs more than £95 to fill up a 55-litre family car of petrol and more than £100 to fill it full of diesel, with no sign that things are going to improve either, with a warning from the RAC that the EU's decision today to ban the vast majority of Russian oil will cause a further immediate price rise just in the next few days, which couldn't really come at a worse time, of course, in the middle of a cost of living crisis and just before millions of journeys are expected over the Jubilee Bank holiday weekend, which of course starts the day after tomorrow.
Yes, indeed, Rhys. Worrying stuff. Thank you very much. Now, a little bit of news that's just breaking. We've just heard from Westminster. Labour have confirmed that leader Sir Keir Starmer and Deputy Leader Angela Rayner have received questionnaires from Durham Police over the so-called Beergate incident last year. And we will bring you any developments on that as we get them. Now, as Chris Ship mentioned, the Queen returned home to Windsor from Balmoral today, with excitement growing ahead of this weekend's celebration. And Becky Manton is there. And Becky, without putting too fine a point on it, everyone's going to be hoping for slightly better weather than we have today, aren't they?
We have literally just put our umbrellas down, Mary. It was raining so hard earlier on, we couldn't even do any kind of rehearsal because the heavens opened. But of course, here in Windsor, it's a real focal point for any royal celebration. And there were certainly plenty of people out and about enjoying Windsor today. Now, there was some sunshine in Windsor. The town was beautifully bedecked in its royal finery with plenty of royal watchers out and about milling around. And the Windsor Beacon, one of 2,022 being lit across the UK and Commonwealth, will be set alight here on Thursday evening outside the Cambridge Gate. The last time this beacon was lit, it was 6 years ago, celebrating the Queen's 90th birthday. And of course, with any national celebration, there's a lot of pressure on the weather forecast, and none more so than here, the Long Walk in Windsor, because there are some very special events happening here this weekend.
We've got this fantastic big lunch, nearly 3,000 people at picnic tables all down the Long Walk. It's going to be incredible. Again, lots of entertainment for the whole family. It's the community coming together to celebrate the Queen's Platinum Jubilee.
So lots of pressure on the forecast this weekend. Is it going to be dry for your celebrations? Let's have a look at the forecast.
Today in some places it could be pouring, but don't worry, it'll only be in very isolated areas. Heinz Salad Cream sponsors ITV National Weather.
So very unsettled today. Sunny spells and heavy showers in the next day or so, but it is slowly starting to turn warmer. Now, if we have a look ahead to this evening and overnight, we've still got some showers around. My goodness, it was an unsettled day today, with even some funnel clouds in places. They're the sort of tornado-y, twistery sort of ones. We had some of those. We also had some hail and thunder as well. And as we have a look ahead to this evening and overnight, a lot of those showers are going to be dying away, but we do have that lump of rain that moves in Northern Ireland and Wales towards the Midlands, giving a couple of hours of heavy rain by the end of the night. And looking ahead to tomorrow, it's still going to be a very wet picture across the Midlands for a time. Again, a couple of hours of heavy rain, and that area of rain is slowly going to be moving east and southeastwards, fragmenting a little bit elsewhere, a mixture of sunny spells and showers. But from a temperature point of view, a degree or so up on what we've seen today. So it is edging in the right direction for the 1st of June. And then we jump ahead to Thursday. Now, I do think at this stage that Thursday is looking to be our most reliably decent of the 4 celebratory days. We are expected to see largely dry, maybe just a few showers across Northern Ireland, but temperatures definitely on the rise.
Heinz Salad Cream sponsors ITV National Weather.
Well, it certainly has been very unsettled today here, but signs of something a little bit more promising over the next few days. Otherwise, we're going to be talking about a totally different, endless rain. Back to you.
Nice pun, Becky, like it. Thank you very much for that. And finally, throughout her reign, one of the quiet hallmarks of the Queen's personal sense of style has been the restrained elegance of her taste in hats, gloves, and of course handbags, a source of keen interest for eager fans and royal watchers alike. Chloe Keedy went to meet the craftspeople who make them.
Her iconic image is instantly recognisable. Her choice of hats and handbags have made headlines all over the world. For 7 decades we have watched and waited, eager to see what the Queen of Style will wear next.
You know, if it's got lots of flowers on it, that's a process that takes a lot of time, just the dyeing, the blocking.
Rachel Trevor Morgan has handmade more than 60 hats for the Queen. There have been dozens of different colours, but there is one favourite style.
It's a very traditional style of hat, brim, crown, and we tend to, have more fun with the trimmings and the flowers and the feathers, which are often taking inspiration from the print of a dress.
The print, or indeed the colour. For the Queen's 90th, it was neon green. Pretty unforgettable, but for Rachel, so too was the first hat she ever made for the Queen.
And it was the occasion of her 80th birthday service at St Paul's. I couldn't quite believe it was going to happen until she stepped out of the carriage, and there she was.
And on the Queen's left arm, another key element of her signature style.
She says, I don't feel dressed unless I've got my handbag with me.
Lorna have been making handbags for the Queen since before she was on the throne.
Does she ever make any special requests?
In the last few years, only in the last few years, we've taken some of the weight out because as she goes older, she doesn't want to carry weight. We try and keep the look the same while taking that out.
I think that the white gloves are an essential element in the Queen's iconic style.
Genevieve James, and before that her mother, have been making them for her since the 40s, but she says this Platinum Jubilee is a particularly special moment.
Our gloves have been part of it for so long. I wish my mother was here to share in that. And I think it's wonderful to celebrate the life of such an amazing woman. There will not be another queen like this queen, and I'm just happy that our gloves have played a small part in it.
All three will be watching closely this week to see what the Queen is wearing, as she celebrates, among other things, 70 years of style. Chloe Keedy, ITV News.
And that is it for now. Raggy's here with news at 10 tonight. But from me and all the team, have a very good evening. Bye-bye.